The marble feels cold even through my gloves, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones when you have been kneeling on it since 5 in the morning. I dip my brush into the bucket, watching the water swirl gray with yesterday's dirt, and scrub at the grout lines that stretch across the Westbrook Grand's lobby like a geometric promise of perfection. Perfection is what they demand here. Perfection is what I cannot afford to fail at. Not with rent due in 3 days, and Emma needing new shoes because 6-year-olds grow faster than my paycheck can keep up. The lobby is still mostly empty, just that hollow quiet of a luxury hotel before the guests descend, before the marble reflects expensive luggage and designer heels instead of my tired reflection. I notice the bellhops moving with unusual urgency near the elevator banks, their posture sharper, more attentive. Someone important must be arriving. Someone whose tip in one night probably equals my monthly wage. I do not let myself think about that too long. Bitterness is a luxury I cannot afford either. I hear the footsteps before I see him. Manager Hastings walks like he owns not just the hotel, but the air inside it. Each step a deliberate claim of territory. My stomach tightens. He has been worse lately. His criticisms sharper. His eyes following me with something that feels like malice, looking for opportunity. I keep scrubbing, hoping he will pass by, hoping I am invisible. I am good at invisible. I have made an art of it. He stops. Of course he stops. I can see his polished shoes in my peripheral vision, so close I could touch them if I reached out. I do not reach out. I keep my head down and scrub harder at a grout line that is already clean. He clears his throat, that performative sound that means he wants an audience. I glance up. He is staring at a spot near the concierge desk, his face twisted in theatrical disgust. There is a water spot on the marble, one single water spot, barely visible unless you are looking for something to criticize. My heart sinks. He points at it like it is a crime scene. His voice carries across the lobby, bouncing off the vaulted ceilings, ensuring everyone hears. "This is unacceptable," he says. "Completely unacceptable. Do you call this clean?" I open my mouth to apologize, the words automatic, but he is already building momentum. Staff members pause in their tasks. An elderly couple near the front desk turns to look. Heat crawls up my neck. I am frozen there on my knees, brush in hand, while Hastings catalogs my failures loud enough for the chandeliers to hear. "Incompetent," he says. "Lazy. A waste of payroll." Each word lands like a slap. I want to defend myself, want to mention my perfect attendance record, the commendations I have received, but my voice has disappeared somewhere beneath the weight of his contempt. And then I feel it. A shift in the air, subtle but unmistakable. Someone is watching, not with the casual curiosity of the gathered staff, but with focus, with intensity that prickles across my skin like static electricity. I do not turn to look. I cannot. But in the corner of my vision, near the leather armchairs by the window, I see him. A man in a black suit that probably costs more than my car. His face is in shadow, but his stillness is absolute, predatory. He is watching Hastings. He is watching me. And something in his posture tells me this moment just became far more dangerous than I understood. Hastings is not finished. I can see it in his eyes, that glitter of cruelty that means he has more prepared, more ammunition in whatever war he has decided to wage against me this morning. He crosses his arms, his voice climbing another octave so even the front desk staff 20 feet away can hear every word. "This is not the first complaint I have received about your work, Clara. Multiple guests have mentioned missing items, small things at first, a watch, earrings. I feel the floor tilt beneath me. That is not true. It cannot be true. I have never taken anything, not even the mints they leave on the pillows, not even when Emma asked if we could have fancy chocolate like the hotel people. My mouth opens, but nothing comes out because how do you defend yourself against lies spoken with such confidence, such authority? I try anyway, my voice coming out smaller than I want, saying I have a perfect record, saying I have worked here for 2 years without a single incident, but Hastings talks over me like I am static, like I am nothing. He reaches into his jacket pocket with theatrical slowness, and my stomach drops before I even see what he is holding. The bracelet catches the morning light streaming through the lobby windows, throwing fractured rainbows across the marble. Diamonds, heavy and intricate and worth more than I will earn in a lifetime. He holds it up, dangling it between two fingers like evidence at a trial. "This was found in your cleaning cart this morning," he says. And the lobby goes silent in a way that feels like the air being sucked out of the room. My blood turns to ice water. I have never seen that bracelet before. I do not even clean rooms where guests would own something like that. I am assigned to the lower floors, the standard suites, the business travelers. This is a setup. The knowledge hits me with absolute certainty, but also with complete helplessness, because who will believe me, a maid with a tired uniform and scuffed shoes, over a manager in a tailored suit? I shake my head, the words tripping over themselves. That is not mine. I did not take that. I would never. But I can see it does not matter. Hastings has already decided how this story ends. The gathered staff watches with the careful neutrality of people who know their own jobs depend on not taking sides. The elderly couple whispers to each other, their expressions a mix of scandal and fascination. I am entertainment. I am a cautionary tale. And in the corner, that man in the black suit leans forward slightly, his hands resting on his knees, his jaw tight. I still cannot see his face clearly, but I can feel his attention like heat, like pressure. Hastings is smiling now, a thin, cruel smile that tells me he is enjoying this, that my fear is exactly what he wanted. He says theft is grounds for immediate termination and prosecution, that he is considering calling the police. And my vision narrows to a tunnel because if the police come, if there is a record, I will never work again. Emma will lose everything. We will lose everything. I cannot breathe. I cannot think. The bracelet glints in Hastings' hand like a weapon, like a noose. And I realize this moment is destroying my life in real time. "You are fired," Hastings says, his voice carrying the finality of a judge delivering a sentence, and the words hit me like a physical blow, effective immediately. "Remove your uniform and leave the premises without collecting your final paycheck. Theft forfeits all compensation." The world tilts sideways and I grab the edge of my cleaning cart to steady myself because my legs have turned to water. I cannot be fired. I cannot lose this job. Rent is due in 3 days and Emma needs shoes and the electricity bill is already overdue, and without a reference I will never find other work, and we will end up on the street. We will lose everything. The panic claws up my throat and I hear myself doing something I swore I would never do. I beg. "Please," I say. And I hate the sound of my own voice, thin and desperate. "Please, Mr. Hastings, I did not take that bracelet. I swear I did not. Please just check the cameras. Please just give me a chance to prove it. My daughter, she needs me to work. We need this job, please." The words tumble out in a rush, and I can feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I will not cry. I will not give him that satisfaction, even as my chest feels like it is caving in. Hastings watches my desperation with something that looks like satisfaction, like this is exactly what he wanted. And I realize with cold clarity that this was never about a bracelet or stolen jewelry. This was about power. This was about grinding someone beneath his heel, because he could. He turns to the security guard near the entrance and snaps his fingers like I am not even human enough to address directly. "Escort her out. Make sure she does not take anything that does not belong to her." The security guard Tom, who always smiled at me in the break room, will not meet my eyes as he approaches. I take a shaking breath and force myself to stand straighter, because if this is how it ends, if I am being destroyed for something I did not do, I will at least leave with whatever dignity I can salvage. I start to turn toward the employee corridor, my vision blurred at the edges, my hands trembling so badly I have to clench them into fists. And then I hear it. A voice, deep and cold and carrying absolute authority, cuts through the lobby like a blade through silk. Repeat what you just said. Everyone freezes. The voice came from behind me, from the corner where that man in the black suit has been watching, and when I turn, I see him standing now, walking forward with a predatory grace that makes my breath catch for an entirely different reason. He is tall, broad-shouldered, his face all sharp angles and cold eyes that fix on Hastings with an intensity that makes the temperature in the lobby drop 10 degrees. Hastings turns, irritation flashing across his face, clearly about to tell this guest to mind his own business, but something stops him. Something in the way the man moves, the way he holds himself, the absolute certainty in his posture. The atmosphere shifts like the moment before lightning strikes. Hastings hesitates, his confidence faltering, and I stand frozen between them, caught in a current I do not understand, but can feel pulling at everything, changing everything, and I do not know if I should be grateful or terrified. The man moves closer, and I can see him clearly now for the first time, and the sight of him steals whatever breath I have left. He is younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair and a face carved from stone and ice, handsome in a way that feels dangerous, like standing too close to a cliff edge. His suit probably costs more than I make in 6 months, perfectly tailored, and he wears it with the casual confidence of someone who has never doubted his place in any room. But it is his eyes that pin me in place, pale gray and cold as winter dawn, assessing everything with a precision that makes me feel exposed. He stops a few feet from Hastings, hands relaxed at his sides, but there is something coiled about him, something that suggests violence held in check by choice, rather than inability. Alexander Thornhill, he says, and the name means nothing to me, but I watch Hastings' face go slack with shock, and then pale with what looks like fear. The casual introduction carries weight I do not understand, like he just said king or executioner. Hastings' mouth opens and closes before he manages to stammer out that he is honored to meet such a distinguished guest, that if there was a problem with his suite, he should have called the front desk, his voice climbing into an obsequious register that makes my skin crawl. Alexander ignores the babbling entirely and extends one hand, palm up, his eyes never leaving Hastings' face. The bracelet. Let me see it. It is not a request. Hastings hesitates, clutching the jewelry like it might save him, but something in Alexander's absolute stillness makes him comply. He places the bracelet in that outstretched hand, like an offering to something that might bite. Alexander holds it up to the light, turning it slowly, examining the setting with the focus of someone who knows exactly what he is looking at. Cartier, he says, his voice conversational but carrying clearly through the silent lobby. Custom setting, platinum and diamonds, approximately 15 carats total weight. Part of a collection stolen from a private vault in Las Vegas 2 months ago, along with several other pieces. The theft made national news. Insurance valued the set at $2 million. He lowers the bracelet and looks at Hastings, his expression unchanged but somehow colder, somehow more predatory. Tell me, Mr. Hastings, how exactly would a maid working standard floor assignments gain access to a piece of stolen jewelry from a Las Vegas vault? Hastings stammers something incoherent, his face cycling through shock and panic, and I realize with dizzy disbelief that Alexander just called the bracelet stolen, that he somehow knows its history, that he just dismantled Hastings' entire setup with a few sentences. Alexander continues as if Hastings had not spoken, turning the bracelet in his fingers like evidence. I am curious about your security protocols. Surely a hotel of this caliber maintains cameras in staff areas. I would very much like to review the footage showing when and how this item appeared in Miss. He glances at me, and I realize he is waiting for my name, but my throat has closed, at the cleaning cart. The silence stretches and breaks when Alexander adds, his tone sharpening into something that cuts. Unless, of course, no such footage exists because the bracelet was never in the cart until you placed it there yourself. I suggest we review your security recordings immediately. Every camera. Every entry and exit for the past 48 hours. Hastings goes white as bone, his hands trembling, and I understand that Alexander Thornhill just offered him a choice between confessing or being exposed, and either way the manager is finished. Alexander turns to me and his eyes lock onto mine with an intensity that makes my heart stutter, and when he speaks his voice is still cold, but somehow directed at me differently, almost gently. "Stay," he says. And it is not a request, but it is not quite a command either. Something in between that makes my knees weak. I nod because I cannot find words, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and confusion and the dawning realization that this stranger just dismantled my destruction with surgical precision, and I do not understand why or who he is or what happens next. Hastings seems to recover some of his composure, drawing himself up and saying with forced authority that this is internal hotel business, and while he appreciates Mr. Thornhill's concern, personnel matters are not guest concerns, and he will handle this appropriately. The words sound hollow, desperate, but he is trying to regain control of a situation that has already slipped through his fingers. Alexander does not even look at him. He pulls a phone from his pocket, sleek and black, and dials without breaking eye contact with me. And I feel pinned by that gaze like something precious and fragile he is making sure does not disappear. He lifts the phone to his ear and says only 4 words. "George, Westbrook Grand. Now." Then he ends the call and slides the phone away, turning finally to Hastings with an expression that could freeze blood. "Someone is coming," Alexander says quietly, "who will be very interested in your security footage and your inventory logs and your explanations. I suggest you prepare them." The lobby is still frozen, staff and guests alike watching this unfold like a play they cannot look away from, and I stand there feeling like the ground beneath me has turned to water. I do not know what is happening, but I can feel the power radiating from this man, the certainty, the absolute lack of doubt that he will get exactly what he wants. Hastings opens his mouth, closes it, his face cycling through rage and fear, but he does not move, does not leave, like something is holding him in place. We wait in terrible silence. I count my own heartbeats. 3 minutes pass, maybe less, and then the front entrance opens and a man in his 60s rushes in, expensive suit rumpled like he dressed in a hurry, his face flushed and his eyes wide. He scans the lobby and when he sees Alexander his expression does something complicated, fear and respect, and something like panic all at once. "Mr. Thornhill," he says, slightly breathless, crossing the marble floor quickly. "I came as soon as you called. Is there a problem? Is your suite not satisfactory? Please tell me how I can assist you." His voice has the quality of someone addressing royalty or a loaded gun. Alexander gestures toward Hastings and then to me. "George, this is your manager, Richard Hastings, and this is—" He pauses, glancing at me with a question in those cold eyes. "Clara," I whisper. "Clara Pembroke." "Clara Pembroke," Alexander repeats, and hearing my name in his voice does something strange to my chest. "Your manager just accused her of theft and fired her in your lobby. I would like you to hear what happened." George Carstairs, because I recognize him now from the photograph in the employee handbook, the owner of the Westbrook Grand, turns to Hastings with an expression that could strip paint. His voice drops into a register I imagine he reserves for disasters. "Explain. Now." Alexander steps forward, and his voice cuts through the tension like a blade, calm and precise. "Mr. Carstairs, your manager accused this woman of theft using a piece of stolen jewelry as evidence. Jewelry I happen to know was taken from a private collection in Las Vegas 2 months ago and is currently listed on international recovery databases. He fired her publicly without investigation or due process. I witnessed the entire incident. His tone is factual, almost casual, but there is steel underneath that makes Carstairs' face go from flushed to gray. The owner turns on Hastings and I watch the manager shrink under that gaze, all his earlier cruelty collapsing into something small and cornered. Hastings opens his mouth but Alexander continues, his words falling like hammer blows. I would suggest, Mr. Carstairs, that you examine your manager's activities more closely, specifically his inventory logs for guest storage, his records of shipments received after hours, and his use of VIP suites that do not appear on your booking system. I believe you will find discrepancies. The lobby is so silent, I can hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Alexander has just accused Hastings of something without stating it directly, painted a picture so clear that everyone listening understands exactly what he means. Hastings goes white, actually white, like every drop of blood has drained from his face, and his hands start to shake. George Carstairs is not a stupid man, and I watch realization dawn across his features, shock and fury, and something that looks like fear for his own reputation. He turns to Hastings, and his voice drops to a whisper that somehow carries. My office, now. Security, escort Mr. Hastings and ensure he does not access any computers or files. Hastings seems to collapse inward, his mouth opening and closing, but Alexander is not finished. One more thing, George. I recommend contacting your legal team and your insurance company immediately, and perhaps the police, though I suspect Detective Thomas Langley is not the officer you want handling this investigation. Check who has been signing off on your security reports. Carstairs nods, his face hardening into something grim and determined, and I realize Alexander just gave him a roadmap to uncover everything, handed him names and directions like he already knows exactly what is hidden in the hotel's records. Hastings finds his voice finally, stammering that this is insane, that he has done nothing wrong, that Mr. Thornhill is clearly mistaken, but his protests sound hollow and desperate. Carstairs ignores him entirely, turning instead to me with an expression that might be apologetic or might just be damage control. Miss Pembroke, please accept my sincerest apologies for this appalling treatment. You are reinstated immediately with full back pay for any hours lost. Alexander speaks again before I can respond, his voice quiet but absolute. And a raise. Compensation for the distress your manager caused. Carstairs does not hesitate. Of course, whatever is appropriate. I will personally ensure this is handled correctly. He gestures sharply to the two security guards who have been standing frozen near the entrance, and they move quickly to flank Hastings, not quite touching him, but making it clear he has no choice. Hastings looks at me, and his expression transforms into something ugly and hateful, his eyes promising retribution. His lips curling around words he does not speak, but I can read in every line of his face. This is not over. You will pay for this. Then security is moving him toward the back offices and he is gone, and I am left standing in the middle of the lobby with George Carstairs apologizing profusely and Alexander Thornhill watching me with those cold gray eyes that somehow feel warm when they rest on my face. Security moves Hastings toward the back hallway that leads to the administrative offices, and as they pass me he turns his head and locks eyes with me, and what I see there makes my blood turn to ice. Pure hatred, unfiltered rage. His lips pull back from his teeth in something that is not quite a smile, more like a promise, and though he does not speak, I can read the words in every line of his twisted expression. This is not over. You will pay for this. I brought you down, and you will suffer for it. The look lasts only seconds before security pulls him around the corner and he disappears from view, but it brands itself into my memory. A warning I know I should take seriously, even though I do not understand yet what power he still has to hurt me. I stand there trembling, my hands shaking so badly I have to clasp them together to hide it, and the lobby around me feels unreal, like I have stepped sideways into some alternate version of my life where powerful men intervene and managers get fired, and I am somehow at the center of something I cannot comprehend. George Carstairs is still talking, his voice washing over me in waves of apology and assurance. saying something about HR procedures and formal documentation and his personal guarantee that I will be treated fairly. But I cannot focus on his words because Alexander Thornhill has turned toward me and his expression has shifted into something different, something softer that makes him look almost human instead of like the cold, avenging force he was moments ago. "Are you all right?" he asks, and his voice is gentle now, quiet, meant only for me, even though we are still standing in the middle of the lobby with staff and guests pretending not to stare. I nod because I do not trust my voice, my throat tight with emotions I cannot name, gratitude and confusion and fear, and something else that flutters dangerously in my chest when he looks at me like that. Carstairs seems to sense the shift and steps back slightly, saying he will have HR contact me directly to arrange everything, that I should take the rest of the day off with pay, that again he is deeply sorry. Alexander does not look away from me. "Take care of it properly, George," he says without turning. "Make sure she is compensated for the distress and the public humiliation." Carstairs agrees immediately, his voice eager to please. "Of course, Mr. Thornhill, absolutely. I will personally oversee it." Then Alexander does something unexpected. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a small card, plain black with silver lettering, and holds it out to me. "If you have any further problems," he says quietly, "call this number." I take the card with fingers that feel numb, looking down at it. There is no name, just a phone number embossed in silver. I look back up at him, questions crowding my mouth. But before I can speak, he nods once, a gesture that feels like both acknowledgement and dismissal. And then he turns and walks toward the elevators with that same controlled grace he had when he first stepped forward, every inch of him radiating power and certainty. I watch him go, clutching the card in my hand, and I realize I do not even know why he helped me, what he wants, whether I should be grateful or terrified, or both. The elevator doors close and he is gone, and I am left standing in the lobby of the Westbrook Grand, with George Carstairs fussing beside me, and my entire world tilted on an axis I did not know existed until 20 minutes ago. I return to work the next day, because George Carstairs insists I take my scheduled shift, and HR will contact me within 48 hours to formalize everything. And the whole experience feels like walking through a dream where nothing is quite solid or real. The other staff members look at me differently now, some with curiosity, others with something that might be fear or respect or both. And I keep my head down and focus on my tasks because I do not know how to explain what happened when I barely understand it myself. Sarah finds me during the lunch break, pulling me into the empty linen storage room with her eyes wide and her voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Do you have any idea who that man was?" she asks. "The one who got Hastings fired?" And I shake my head because I only know his name, Alexander Thornhill, and that he carries himself like someone accustomed to being obeyed. Sarah grabs my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. "Clara, Alexander Thornhill owns half the city. Not the legitimate half. He runs everything from the docks to the east side, gambling, protection, imports that never see customs paperwork. People who cross him disappear." Her words hit me like ice water, and my stomach drops sickeningly because suddenly the way George Carstairs acted makes perfect sense. The fear in his face, the immediate compliance, the way everyone seemed to hold their breath when Alexander spoke. I was saved by a criminal, a gangster, someone dangerous enough that grown men go pale at his name. Sarah is still talking, saying that Alexander Thornhill is not someone you want noticing you, that his help always comes with a price, that I need to be careful, but her warnings feel like they come too late because he has already noticed me, already intervened, already given me his card with that single phone number embossed in silver. I touch my pocket where the card sits like a burning coal, and I do not tell Sarah about it because I do not know what it means, or what he expects from me, or whether I should throw it away and pretend this never happened. The rest of my shift passes in a blur of repetitive tasks, scrubbing and polishing and changing linens, but my mind is elsewhere, circling around the memory of Alexander Thornhill's gray eyes and the way he looked at me with something that felt almost protective, almost personal. Evening comes, and I clock out and take the bus across town to pick up Emma from Mrs. Chen's apartment where she stays on my work days. And when I see my daughter's face light up at my arrival, I feel something break open in my chest. I kneel down and pull her into my arms, holding her so tight she squeals and giggles, and I breathe in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and feel the solid reality of her small body against mine. This is what matters. This is what I work for, what I sacrifice for, what I would do anything to protect. We walk home through the cooling streets as Emma chatters about her day, telling me about the picture she drew and the game she played, and I hold her hand and smile and respond. But underneath I am terrified, because I do not understand what happened today, or what it means for our future. What does a man like Alexander Thornhill want? Did he just happen to be there at the right moment? Or was it something else, something I cannot see yet? And why do I feel grateful and frightened in equal measure, like I have been saved and trapped simultaneously? 2 days pass in a strange limbo, where I go through the motions of my work, but feel disconnected from everything, like I am watching my own life from behind glass. And then on the third day, Margaret Whitmore assigns me to the 18th floor, and my heart stops, because I know without being told that this is Alexander Thornhill's suite. My hands tremble as I push the cleaning cart down the long carpeted hallway, counting door numbers, and when I reach his room, I stand frozen for a full minute before I can make myself knock, my knuckles rapping softly against the polished wood. The door opens almost immediately, and he is standing there, no bodyguards visible, just him in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, and he looks at me with those gray eyes that seem to see everything I am trying to hide. "Come in," he says, his voice quiet but absolutely commanding, and I push the cart inside because refusing does not feel like an option when Alexander Thornhill invites you into his space. The suite is massive, all floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city spreading out below, furniture that probably costs more than I make in a year, everything sleek and expensive and intimidating. He closes the door behind me and the click of the latch sounds too loud, too final. I start to move toward the bathroom to begin cleaning, but he speaks, and I stop. "What is your name?" he asks, and I realize with a shock that we have never actually been introduced, that he intervened in my life without knowing anything about me except what he saw in that moment. "Clara," I answer, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. "Clara Pembroke." He nods slowly, like he is filing the information away. "And your daughter," he says, not a question but a statement. "How old is she?" The world tilts sideways and my blood goes cold because how does he know about Emma? How does he know I have a daughter? And suddenly, this feels less like gratitude and more like something darker, something that wraps around me like invisible chains. I must look as panicked as I feel because he raises one hand in a calming gesture. "I make it my business to know who I help," he says, his tone reasonable, almost gentle. "Emma is 6. She stays with Mrs. Chen on the 4th floor of your building on your work days. You take the number 7 bus both directions. Your rent is 900 a month, and you are current on payments but barely." He recites these facts like he is reading from a file, and I suppose he is, a file someone compiled on me, and I do not know whether to feel protected or hunted. It sounds protective the way he says it, like he is explaining why he cares, but it also sounds like surveillance, like I am being watched every moment and did not know it until now. Alexander walks to the window and looks out over the city with his hands clasped behind his back, his posture relaxed but somehow still commanding, and when he speaks again, his voice has shifted into something more businesslike, more formal. "I own a property on the east side," he says, "a boutique hotel that caters to a specific clientele, legitimate business, fully licensed and legal. I need someone to manage it, someone trustworthy who understands what it means to work hard and treat people with respect. The previous manager retired last month, and I have been interviewing replacements, but no one has been suitable. He turns back to face me, and his gray eyes lock onto mine with an intensity that makes my breath catch. I am offering you the position, Clara. The pay is triple what you make here, full benefits, and there is an apartment on the top floor that comes with the job, 2 bedrooms, furnished, utilities included. My mind goes blank for a moment, because this cannot be real. This kind of opportunity does not fall into the laps of hotel maids who scrub floors for minimum wage, and my first instinct is suspicion, because nothing in my life has ever come without a price. Why would you do this? I ask. And I hear the tremor in my own voice, the fear and confusion mixing together. You do not know me. You do not know if I can even manage a property like that. I have never done anything except clean rooms and follow orders. Alexander moves closer, not threatening but purposeful, and he stops just near enough that I can smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that probably costs more than my monthly rent. I value loyalty, he says, and I recognize when someone is being exploited, when someone has more potential than their circumstances allow them to show. What I saw in that lobby was not weakness, Clara. It was dignity under attack. That tells me more about your character than any resume ever could. His words should comfort me, but instead they intensify my confusion because there is something else in his eyes, something that feels personal rather than professional. Like this is not just about business efficiency or recognizing talent. What is the catch? I ask bluntly, because I need to understand what he expects from me, what this will cost me beyond the obvious debt of gratitude. He smiles then, just a slight curve of his mouth that does not quite reach his eyes, but softens his expression anyway. No catch, he says quietly. Just an opportunity. You can accept or decline. If you decline, nothing changes. You keep your job here, I ensure Carstairs treats you fairly, and we never speak again. If you accept, you work for me, you manage the Eastwood professionally, and you build a better life for yourself and your daughter. The choice is entirely yours. I want to believe him, want to accept this gift that has appeared out of nowhere like something from a fairy tale. But fairy tales always have hidden prices, and men like Alexander Thornhill do not give without expecting something in return. I need to think about it, I say finally, and he nods immediately like this is exactly the answer he expected. Take all the time you need, he says. When you decide, call the number on the card I gave you. His tone makes it clear the conversation is over, and I push my cleaning cart toward the door, my hands still shaking, my mind spinning with possibilities and dangers I cannot yet name. I walk home that night through streets slick with rain, my mind turning over Alexander's offer like a puzzle I cannot solve, and I am so lost in thought that I almost do not notice the black sedan parked across from my building, almost miss the way it sits too still with its engine running. Emma is at her friend Lily's house for a sleepover, the first one I have ever let her attend, and I felt guilty about it all day, but Lily's mother insisted, and Emma was so excited that I could not say no, could not explain that I am afraid of everything now. Afraid of what it means that Alexander Thornhill knows where we live and how much our rent costs. I climb the stairs to the 4th floor, my keys already in my hand, and I am reaching for the lock when I notice my door is not quite closed, hanging open just a crack, and my heart stops because I know I locked it this morning. I always lock it, always check it twice. I should run. Every instinct screams at me to turn around and run, but I think of Emma's stuffed rabbit inside, the photo albums, the few precious things we own, and I push the door open slowly, my hand fumbling for the light switch. The lights do not come on when I flip the switch, and that is when I know for certain that something is terribly wrong, when rough hands grab me from behind and a palm clamps over my mouth, cutting off my scream before it can form. I fight, kicking backward, twisting, but there are 2 of them and they are strong, professional. and one of them hisses at me to stop struggling, or it will be worse. They drag me inside and kick the door shut, and in the darkness I hear a third voice, calm and familiar, and filled with such cold satisfaction that my blood turns to ice. "Hello, Clara," Richard Hastings says, and I hear him moving closer though I cannot see him. "You cost me everything. My job, my reputation, my very lucrative business arrangement. Did you think there would not be consequences?" I try to speak, but the hand over my mouth presses harder, and Hastings makes a soft tisking sound. "Your daughter is safe for now," he says, and the relief that floods through me is so intense I almost collapse. "For now," he repeats, letting those words hang in the air like a threat. "But you, Clara, you are going to pay for what you did. You and your new protector." They haul me toward the door and I fight harder, thrashing, trying to bite the hand covering my mouth. But one of them wraps an arm around my throat and squeezes just enough to make black spots dance in my vision. When my knees buckle, they drag me out into the hallway and down the back stairs, the service entrance that no one ever uses. And outside, there is a white van waiting with its rear doors open, like a mouth ready to swallow me. They throw me inside and I land hard on the metal floor, my shoulders screaming with pain. Hastings climbs in after me, settling onto a bench bolted to the wall, and in the dim interior light I can see his face, see the bruises and cuts that mark him from his own firing, from whatever consequences Alexander set in motion. "Alexander Thornhill will not save you this time," he says as the van lurches into motion. "By the time he even knows you are missing, it will be far too late." The warehouse smells like rust and old fish and something chemical that burns the back of my throat, and the chair they have tied me to is metal and so cold it seeps through my jeans into my bones, making me shiver uncontrollably, though I am not sure if it is the temperature or the terror. Hastings paces in front of me like a predator circling wounded prey, his footsteps echoing in the vast empty space, and the fluorescent lights hanging from chains above cast harsh shadows that make his face look skeletal, hollowed out by rage and desperation. "You have no idea what you have done," he says, his voice conversational, almost friendly, which somehow makes it worse than if he were shouting. "I ran a very successful operation through the Westbrook for 7 years, moving merchandise for some very serious people, very connected people who do not appreciate disruption. Stolen art, jewelry, electronics, antiquities, all of it flowing through those VIP suites you were so careful to avoid when you cleaned. I made millions. My partners made millions. Everything was perfect, until you had to catch Alexander Thornhill's attention with your pathetic dignity act." He stops pacing and turns to face me fully. And I can see the bruises on his jaw, the cut above his eyebrow that has scabbed over badly. "When Carstairs fired me, my partners were not understanding," he continues. "They believe I was careless, that I drew unnecessary attention from exactly the wrong person. Alexander Thornhill controls the North and West Territories. My partners control the South Docks and the airport routes. There is an understanding, a balance, borders that are not crossed. But now Thornhill is asking questions about shipments, about routes, about who was using his city without permission. My partners think I have started a war." I force myself to focus through the fear, to listen carefully, to understand what he is really saying, because information might be the only weapon I have right now. "Who are your partners?" I ask, and my voice comes out steadier than I expected, cold and clear in the cavernous space. Hastings laughs, a harsh bark of sound without humor. "Does it matter? Names you would not recognize, organizations that have been moving goods through this city since before you were born. But they want blood now, Clara. They want compensation for the routes they have had to abandon, the shipments they have lost, the attention Thornhill has brought down on operations that relied on invisibility. And I'm going to give them exactly what they want." He crouches in front of me, his eyes level with mine, and I smell whiskey on his breath, see the manic edge of a man with nothing left to lose. I am going to kill you, and make sure everyone knows it was because of Alexander Thornhill's interference, he says softly, intimately, like he is sharing a secret. Your body will be a message, the spark that turns this cold standoff into open war. While they are all busy tearing each other apart, I will disappear with enough money to start over somewhere warm and far away. He stands abruptly and walks toward a workbench against the far wall where tools are laid out in a neat row that makes my stomach turn over with sick dread. I test the ropes binding my wrists behind the chair, feeling for any give, any weakness, but whoever tied them knew what they were doing, and the rough fibers only cut deeper into my skin when I struggle. The lights die all at once, plunging the warehouse into absolute darkness so complete I cannot see my own hands still bound behind me, and for one terrible heartbeat, there is only silence, thick and suffocating, before the world explodes into violence and sound. Gunfire erupts from multiple directions, muzzle flashes strobing like lightning, illuminating frozen snapshots of chaos, men diving for cover, Hastings throwing himself behind a stack of crates, and I do the only thing I can think to do, throwing my weight sideways with all my strength. The chair tips and I crash hard onto the concrete floor, my shoulder taking the impact with a crack that might be the chair or might be me, pain shooting down my arm. But I stay down, making myself as small as possible as bullets whine through the air above me, ricocheting off metal beams with sharp pinging sounds that make my ears ring. I hear shouting, commands barked in voices I do not recognize, then returning fire from where Hastings's men were stationed near the entrance, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling my nose and making my eyes water. The firefight lasts maybe 30 seconds, but it feels like hours. Each breath I take shallow and panicked, and then suddenly it stops, silence falling again like a curtain, absolute except for the ringing in my ears, and someone groaning in pain somewhere to my left. The overhead lights flicker once, twice, then blaze back to life, and I squint against the sudden brightness, my eyes adjusting slowly. And what I see makes my heart stop completely before lurching back into a frantic rhythm. Alexander Thornhill stands in the doorway like an avenging angel dressed in black, his suit somehow still immaculate despite the violence, and flanked on either side by William Sinclair and 4 other men, all armed, all scanning the warehouse with professional efficiency. Hastings is on the floor 10 feet from me, clutching his shoulder where blood seeps between his fingers, his face twisted with pain and rage, and his 2 men are either down or fled, I cannot tell which, and do not care. Alexander's eyes sweep the space and find me immediately, something fierce and almost frightening flashing across his face when he sees me on the floor still tied to the overturned chair, and he moves, crossing the distance between us in long strides that eat up the concrete floor. He drops to one knee beside me, his hands already reaching for the ropes binding my wrists. And up close I can see the tension in his jaw, the cold fury in his eyes that is somehow not directed at me, but for me. "Are you hurt?" he asks, his voice low and controlled, but with an edge like a blade, and his fingers work at the knots with surprising gentleness, careful not to pull the rough fibers against my raw skin. I shake my head because I cannot find words yet, my throat tight with relief and residual terror, and the moment the ropes fall away, he helps me sit up, his hands steady on my back, grounding me when everything else feels like it is spinning out of control. Alexander helps me to my feet, his hand gripping my arm with controlled strength, and the moment I am upright, something inside me collapses, the adrenaline that has been holding me together suddenly draining away like water through cupped fingers, and my knees buckle beneath me. He catches me before I fall, his arms coming around me solid and sure, and I do not even think about it. I just let myself lean into him, my forehead pressing against his chest, my hands fisting in the fabric of his jacket as tremors I cannot control shake through my whole body. He holds me steady, one hand spread across my back, the other cradling the back of my head, and I can feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against my cheek, calm and even when mine is still racing like something wild trying to escape a cage. "William, take Hastings," Alexander says, his voice rumbling through his chest where I am pressed against him, and I turn my head just enough to see William Sinclair moving toward where Hastings is still slumped on the floor, clutching his bleeding shoulder, his face gray with pain and fear. What will happen to him? I hear myself ask, my voice muffled against Alexander's jacket, and I feel him tense slightly, his hand on my back, pressing firmer, like he is anchoring me to something solid. He will answer for his crimes to people far less forgiving than the police, Alexander says quietly, and there is something dark and final in his tone that tells me I should not ask for details, that there are things in his world I am better off not knowing. I nod against his chest because I understand, because part of me does not want to know what justice looks like in the world Alexander Thornhill inhabits, and another part of me feels a savage satisfaction that Hastings will not simply walk away from what he tried to do to me. Alexander shifts, his hand moving from the back of my head to tilt my chin up gently, and I meet his eyes, gray and stormy and focused entirely on me, with an intensity that makes my breath catch. "Come on," he says softly. "I am taking you home." He keeps one arm around me as we walk toward the warehouse entrance. Past his men who are efficiently cleaning up whatever evidence was left behind, past Hastings who does not even look at me now, and out into the cool night air that smells like salt water and gasoline and freedom. His car is parked near the dock entrance, a sleek black sedan that probably costs more than I have made in 5 years, and he opens the passenger door for me, waiting until I am settled before closing it with a quiet click that sounds too refined for the violence we just left behind. The interior is all soft leather and polished wood, and I sink into the seat feeling bizarrely out of place. This maid still wearing yesterday's clothes now sitting in a vehicle that belongs in a different world entirely. Alexander slides into the driver's seat, starting the engine with a low purr, and we pull away from the warehouse, leaving the docks behind as the city lights grow brighter ahead of us. The silence between us is thick with things neither of us knows how to say, questions I should ask but cannot find the words for, gratitude that feels inadequate for what he just did, and underneath it all, a current of something else, something that has been building since that first morning in the hotel lobby when he stepped forward and changed everything. The apartment building looks shabbier somehow when we pull up to the curb, the cracked concrete steps and peeling paint thrown into sharp relief by the gleaming black perfection of Alexander's car, and I feel a spike of embarrassment at the contrast between his world and mine that I have to swallow down as he turns off the engine and reaches for his door handle. "You do not have to walk me up," I say quietly, because the idea of Alexander Thornhill in my cramped third-floor walk-up suddenly feels impossible, like bringing a panther into a canary cage. His eyes find mine in the dim interior of the car, shadows cutting across his face, making him look both dangerous and impossibly handsome. "I am walking you up," he says, and there is no room for argument in his tone, that same command he used in the warehouse when he told William to take Hastings away. We climb the stairs in silence, my legs shaky from adrenaline crash and his hand hovering near the small of my back without quite touching, and I fumble with my keys at the door, hands trembling enough that it takes 2 tries to get the lock to turn. Inside, my apartment looks exactly as I left it this morning, a lifetime ago, before Hastings kicked in this same door and dragged me into nightmare. Emma's toys scattered across the worn carpet, and my coffee mug still sitting on the kitchen counter next to the stack of bills I cannot quite pay. Alexander moves past me into the small living room, and I watch him check the windows, test the locks, examine the fire escape with the practiced efficiency of someone who thinks in terms of threat assessment and escape routes. He moves through the tiny kitchen, the bathroom, finally Emma's bedroom with its pink curtains and stuffed animals piled on the narrow bed, and I stand frozen by the door wondering what he sees when he looks at my life laid bare like this. When he returns to the living room, his expression is unreadable, something tight around his eyes that might be anger or something else. "My men will watch the building tonight," he says. standing close enough that I can smell gunpowder still clinging faintly to his jacket, mixed with expensive cologne and something uniquely him. You will be safe. Why are you doing this? I ask. Because the question has been building in me since the warehouse, since he appeared like something out of a dream to save me when he had no reason to care whether I lived or died. He goes very still, those gray eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that makes my breath catch and my heart stutter. I do not tolerate predators who hurt innocents, he says quietly, each word deliberate and controlled. But there is something else in his gaze, something raw and almost vulnerable that contradicts the cool authority of his voice, and for just a moment I see past the reputation and the power to something human and hurting underneath. He reaches out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and his fingers brush a strand of hair back from my face, with a gentleness that seems impossible from hands that I know have done terrible things. You should rest, he says, his voice rough. I will make sure no one gets near you. Then he steps back, putting careful distance between us, and walks to the door. I do not move as he leaves, do not say anything because there are no words for what is happening between us. And after the door closes behind him, I stand in my empty apartment, feeling his presence lingering in the air like smoke, protective and dangerous and impossible to ignore. I wake to pale morning light filtering through the thin curtains, and for a moment, I forget where I am, forget everything that happened, until the ache in my muscles reminds me of being tied to that chair, and the memory comes crashing back like cold water. Hastings and the warehouse and Alexander's arms around me, steadying me when I thought I might fall apart completely. I sit up too fast, my head spinning, and that is when I see it, the door to my apartment, the one that was kicked in last night, now fitted with a new lock that gleams silver and solid in the morning light. The wood around the frame repaired so cleanly, I might have imagined the violence, if not for the fresh paint smell lingering in the air. I stumble out of bed, my heart racing, and cross to the kitchen, still wearing yesterday's clothes that smell like fear and gunpowder. And there, on the scratched laminate counter, sits a phone I have never seen before, sleek and black and expensive-looking, completely out of place next to my chipped coffee mug and the stack of bills I still have not figured out how to pay. I pick it up with trembling fingers, the screen lighting up at my touch, and there is only one number programmed into the contacts. No name, just digits that I somehow know will reach him. Beside the phone is a note written in bold handwriting that slants across the paper with confident strokes. Call if you need anything. No signature because none is needed. And I stand there holding this phone that represents a connection to a world I should want nothing to do with. A man who kills people and runs criminal empires and just saved my life without hesitation. I should be frightened. Should be looking over my shoulder and planning how to disappear before I get pulled deeper into whatever darkness surrounds Alexander Thornhill. But instead, I feel something else entirely. Something that feels dangerously like safety. Like for the first time in years, someone is watching out for me. Not because they pity me, but because they choose to. I set the phone down carefully and move through my morning routine on autopilot, showering away the warehouse smell, dressing in clean clothes, trying to feel normal when everything has shifted beneath my feet like sand. And then I walk the 4 blocks to Mrs. Chen's apartment where Emma stayed last night. My daughter's safe and oblivious to how close I came to never coming back. Emma throws herself into my arms the moment Mrs. Chen opens the door, chattering about the movie they watched and the pancakes she had for breakfast, and I hold her so tight she squirms and laughs. This perfect small person who is my entire world, the reason I get up every morning and scrub floors and swallow my pride. That evening after Emma is asleep, her small body curled around her favorite stuffed rabbit, I sit at my kitchen table staring at the black phone for what feels like hours, Alexander's note still lying beside it, and I think about choices, about the difference between the safety of staying small and invisible versus the danger of reaching for something more. I pick up the phone, my hand steadier than I expect, and I dial the only number programmed into it, and he answers on the first ring, his voice low and familiar, even through the digital connection saying my name like a question. I accept your job offer, I say quietly, the words feeling like jumping off a cliff, or maybe like finally learning to fly, and there is a pause on the other end, a moment of silence that stretches long enough for me to hear his breath. And then he says, "When can you start?" And I close my eyes knowing I am choosing him, choosing this, choosing to step out of the shadows and into whatever light or darkness waits on the other side. The Eastwood Boutique Hotel sits on a tree-lined street in a neighborhood I have only driven through before, never imagining I would belong here. And when Alexander's driver pulls up to the entrance 3 days after I accepted the job, I have to remind myself to breathe because the building is beautiful in a way that feels almost impossible. All restored brick and wrought iron balconies and windows that gleam in the afternoon sun like promises. William Sinclair meets us at the door, his expression professionally neutral as he helps Emma out of the car, her small hand disappearing into his much larger one, and she looks up at him with wide, curious eyes, asking if he is a giant, which makes the corner of his mouth twitch in something that might be amusement. The lobby inside takes my breath away, intimate and elegant with soft lighting and furniture that looks expensive but somehow inviting. Nothing like the cold marble grandeur of the Westbrook Grand, and I stand there clutching Emma's hand, wondering how I am supposed to manage a place this beautiful when 2 weeks ago I was scrubbing floors. Alexander appears from a hallway to the left, dressed in charcoal gray that makes his eyes look like smoke, and when his gaze finds mine, something warm unfolds in my chest that I am not ready to name. "Miss Pembroke," he says, formal in front of William and the two staff members hovering near the reception desk, "welcome to the Eastwood." He gives us a tour, showing me the office that is now mine, with a desk that has actual drawers that lock and a computer that does not freeze every 10 minutes. The small dining room where complimentary breakfast is served, the 12 guest rooms each decorated differently, but all maintaining the same atmosphere of comfortable luxury, and finally the apartment on the top floor, a space with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen with appliances that all match and windows that overlook the street below. Emma runs from room to room, her delighted laughter echoing off walls that do not have water stains or peeling paint, and I watch her claim the smaller bedroom with its window seat and built-in bookshelves, and I feel something crack open inside me, gratitude mixed with fear, mixed with something dangerously close to hope. The staff is professional and kind, introducing themselves with genuine warmth, and I suspect they all know exactly who owns this hotel and what that means, but no one treats me with anything but respect, and over the following weeks I learn the rhythms of this new life, managing reservations and supervising housekeeping and handling guest concerns with a confidence I did not know I possessed. Alexander visits every Thursday evening, ostensibly to review financial reports and discuss business operations. But our meetings always stretch longer than necessary, conversations drifting from occupancy rates to personal territory, careful questions that map the borders of who we are beneath the roles we play. He tells me about growing up in the industrial district where the factories closed one by one, leaving families with nothing, about building his first business at 19 through means he does not specify, about the code he lives by that separates him from men like Hastings who prey on the weak for sport rather than necessity. I find myself watching for his arrival each week, listening for his footsteps on the stairs, and when he looks at me with those gray eyes that see too much, I feel exposed and protected simultaneously, like standing in a storm that might destroy me or transform me, but will definitely change everything. It is a Thursday evening in late October when Alexander stays after our usual business meeting. The last guest checked in hours ago and the staff gone home, leaving just the two of us in the small lobby where I have dimmed the lights to something softer, more intimate than the bright professionalism of daytime operations. He produces a bottle of wine from somewhere, good wine that probably costs more than my first car, and 2 glasses that catch the lamplight like captured amber, and we sit in the leather chairs by the window overlooking the street where fallen leaves skitter across pavement in the autumn wind. We have done this before, these extended conversations that drift past business into personal territory, but tonight feels different somehow, charged with something unspoken that hums in the air between us like electricity before a storm. He asks about my past, his voice low and genuinely curious, and maybe it is the wine or maybe it is the way he looks at me like I am someone worth knowing beyond my usefulness. But I find myself telling him things I never talk about. How Emma's father left 2 weeks after I told him I was pregnant. How he said he was going to the store for cigarettes and just never came back. Not a word or a message or a forwarding address. Just gone like I meant nothing. I tell Alexander about the months that followed, working 2 jobs while my belly grew, sleeping on my friend's couch until she got tired of my presence, moving into that tiny apartment with its broken heater and neighbors who fought at 3 in the morning, about holding Emma for the first time and feeling equal parts overwhelming love and absolute terror, because I was alone and responsible for this perfect fragile life. He listens with complete attention, not interrupting or offering empty reassurances, just present in a way that makes me feel heard. And when I finish talking, there is a moment of silence that does not feel awkward, but rather full of understanding. I turn the question back on him, asking if he has family, and I watch his expression shift, something shuddering behind his eyes like a door closing against old pain. He is quiet for so long I think he will not answer, but then he speaks, his voice rougher than before, telling me he had a sister once, younger by 3 years, bright and funny and too trusting for the world they grew up in. She died when he was 22, killed by men who wanted to hurt him, to teach him a lesson about territory and respect, and he could not protect her because he was too young and too weak, and did not see the threat until it was too late. I understand suddenly with perfect clarity why he intervened that morning at the Westbrook Grand, why he could not walk past a woman being destroyed by a man with power, why he built his empire with such ruthless determination, not just for wealth or control, but as armor against ever being powerless again. Without thinking, I reach across the small table between us, placing my hand over his where it rests against the dark wood, and his eyes lift to mine, gray and wounded and surprised by the gesture. And neither of us moves, the touch connecting us in a way that words cannot. And I feel the shift between us, something fundamental changing like tectonic plates sliding into new alignment. The touch shifts something between us, like a key turning in a lock I did not know existed, and Alexander looks down at my hand covering his, my fingers pale against his darker skin, and when his eyes lift to meet mine, they are full of something raw and unguarded that makes my breath catch in my throat. The air thickens, charged with possibility and danger and want, and I know we are standing at the edge of something irreversible, a cliff I could step back from if I were smart or careful or less lonely. "This is dangerous," he says finally, his voice rough and low. "Being close to me puts you at risk, Clara. People who want to hurt me will look for weaknesses. And you are," he pauses. "You would be a weakness." I should pull my hand back, retreat to the safety of distance and professional boundaries, but instead, I find myself leaning forward slightly, holding his gaze. "I am already involved," I tell him. "You made sure of that when you saved me that morning, when you gave me this job. When you put your men outside my building, I was involved the moment you decided I mattered." His jaw tightens, and I see conflict play across his features, the part of him that wants to protect me warring with the part that wants something else entirely. "I have wanted you since that first morning," he admits, the words coming like a confession. "Watching you on your knees scrubbing floors while that bastard tore into you, and you never begged, never broke. You just gathered yourself with so much dignity, and I saw strength, not weakness, fire, not fragility." My heart hammers against my ribs because no one has ever seen me that way, as strong rather than struggling, as fire rather than someone barely surviving. I should tell him I am not strong, that I am terrified most of the time, that I have no idea what I am doing with my life, or how to navigate a world where mafia bosses drink wine with single mothers in empty hotel lobbies. But what comes out instead is the truth. I am terrified of you, I confess. Of what you are and what you do, and the fact that you could destroy me without even trying. But I am also drawn to you in a way that makes no sense. Like gravity or magnetic poles. Something I cannot explain or control. His hand turns under mine, his fingers threading through mine, holding rather than being held. I will keep you safe, he promises. His thumb brushing across my knuckles in a gesture so tender it makes my chest ache. Whatever else happens, Clara, I will protect you and Emma. You have my word. I believe him, which is either wisdom or madness, and when he stands, he does not let go of my hand, pulling me gently to my feet, so we are standing close enough that I can feel the heat of him, smell the expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. He lifts his free hand to my face, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw with devastating gentleness, and I realize this powerful, dangerous man is giving me time to pull away, to refuse, to choose safety over whatever this is becoming. Instead, I lean into his touch, my eyes closing briefly, and when I open them again, his face is closer, his expression intense and questioning, and full of restrained want. I answer by rising onto my toes, closing the last small distance between us. And when our lips meet, it feels inevitable, like something the universe has been building towards since that morning in the Westbrook Grand. The kiss slow and careful and deepening into something that burns through every defense I have left. The weeks that follow our first kiss unfold like a dream I am afraid to wake from, soft and strange and filled with moments I never imagined possible for someone like me. Alexander comes to the hotel 3 or 4 times a week now, sometimes for business but often just to see me. And he is careful with Emma in a way that makes my heart ache, bringing her books instead of toys, asking about her drawings, listening when she talks about her day at school with the kind of attention most adults do not give children. I watch him sit on the floor of our apartment with my daughter showing him her collection of smooth stones from the park. This dangerous man who commands an empire built on fear and violence, and I see someone gentle beneath all that power, someone who might have been different if the world had not demanded he become hard to survive. Clara sees a different side of him that no one else witnesses, the man who remembers how I take my coffee, who notices when I am tired and sends me home early, who installed a better heating system in the building without telling me until the first cold night when Emma's room stayed warm. It feels too good, too easy, and I keep waiting for the cost to reveal itself because nothing this precious comes without a price. The danger resurfaces on a gray Tuesday afternoon in mid-November when I am reviewing inventory in the hotel office and one of the desk staff tells me there is a detective asking to speak with me. My stomach drops because police mean questions and questions mean exposure, and I am suddenly aware of how deeply entangled I have become in Alexander's world. Thomas Langley is 40-something with tired eyes and a smile that does not reach them. His badge clipped to his belt where I cannot miss it, and he asks if we can speak privately with the kind of courtesy that is really a command. I lead him to the back office, my hands steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. He does not waste time on pleasantries, telling me that Alexander Thornhill is under investigation for racketeering and money laundering, that the federal government is building a case, that anyone close to him will be implicated when the indictments come down. I listen without speaking, trying to read what he really wants beneath the official language. Langley leans forward, his voice dropping to something almost kind, and says he knows I am a good mother, a decent person caught up in something beyond my control, that he can offer me immunity if I cooperate, if I provide information about Alexander's business dealings, his associates, his routines. The offer hangs between us like poison wrapped in mercy. I meet his eyes and tell him I manage a hotel, that I know nothing about anything illegal, that Alexander Thornhill is simply the owner, and I am simply an employee. Langley's expression hardens, and the false kindness evaporates, replaced by something colder and more honest. He tells me that loyalty to Alexander Thornhill is a fatal mistake, that women like me always think they are special until they end up as collateral damage, that I should think carefully about my daughter's future before I make choices I cannot take back. He leaves his card on the desk between us and walks out, and I sit there shaking with anger and fear, because the safe world I thought Alexander had built around us just revealed its cracks. I call Alexander the moment Emma is safely in bed that night, my hands shaking as I grip the phone, and he answers before the second ring, his voice immediately alert and focused. "We need to talk," I say, and he tells me he will be there in 10 minutes. No question about whether it is too late or inconvenient, because he hears the tension in my voice and responds like the threat he always assumes is coming. When he arrives, he is not alone. William Sinclair stationed outside my door, and Alexander's face is hard and cold in a way I have not seen since the warehouse. The gentle man who sits on floors with my daughter, replaced by something far more dangerous. I tell him about Langley's visit, about the immunity offer and the threats wrapped in false concern, and I watch his fury build like a storm gathering pressure, his jaw tightening and his hands curling into fists before he forcibly relaxes them. "Langley does not work for the federal government," he says finally, his voice low and controlled. "He works for the Volkov family. They are trying to move into territory I control, and they are using legal pressure and intimidation to destabilize my operations, to make my people doubt my ability to protect them." I feel cold understanding spread through my chest, because this means the danger is not some distant legal threat, but immediate and personal and aimed directly at the people Alexander cares about. "What does that mean for me and Emma?" I ask, the question I need answered more than anything else. Alexander moves closer, his hands framing my face with devastating gentleness that contrasts with the lethal intent in his eyes. "It means I will handle it," he says. "It means you need to trust me, Clara. I will not let them touch you or your daughter. I promise you that." I realize in that moment that I do trust him, completely and possibly foolishly, that somewhere between that first morning and now, I have handed this dangerous man my safety and my daughter's future, and I am not taking it back. I tell him I trust him, and something in his expression softens just slightly before his phone vibrates and he pulls it out, his face going absolutely still as he reads whatever message appeared. William is calling him, voices urgent in the hallway, and Alexander is moving toward the door telling me to stay inside, to lock it behind him. But I follow because the terror in my gut tells me something has happened. William's face is grim when Alexander opens the door and he speaks quietly, but I hear it anyway. "They made a move on the girl. Attempted pickup at the school. Our men intercepted. But this is open war now. My knees nearly give out because they tried to take Emma. They tried to take my daughter, and Alexander catches me with one arm while giving orders with cold precision, telling William to lock down all properties and bring in everyone from the secondary locations." He turns back to me, and I see something in his face I have never seen before. Not anger, but absolute lethal certainty. The face of a man who has just decided someone is going to die. "They came after Emma," he says quietly. "They crossed the only line that matters, and I understand that whatever restraint he has been operating under just shattered completely." We leave the city within the hour, Emma sleepy and confused as I carry her to the car where William waits with the engine running. And Alexander follows with a single bag and his phone pressed to his ear, issuing commands in that cold voice that means people will move immediately or face consequences they do not want to imagine. The estate is 40 minutes north, hidden behind walls and gates that open silently as we approach. The house itself sprawling and beautiful in a way that speaks of old money and careful security. And I carry Emma upstairs to a bedroom that looks like it belongs in a fairy tale. All soft colors and clean lines, and she barely wakes as I tuck her in and kiss her forehead. Alexander is waiting in the hallway when I emerge, his expression unreadable, and he leads me downstairs to a study lined with books and dark wood where a fire burns low in the fireplace. He pours me a drink I do not ask for, and I take it because my hands need something to hold, and he stands by the window looking out at grounds I cannot see in the darkness, his shoulders tense with the weight of decisions already made. I need to end this, he says without turning. The Volkov family has been pushing into my territory for 6 months, but I have been trying to handle it without open war, because war means collateral damage and innocent people caught in crossfire. But they came after Emma, and that changes everything. I hear the finality in his voice, and I understand that whatever restraint he has been exercising is gone now, burned away by the threat to my daughter. He turns to face me, and his eyes are hard and sad at the same time, and he tells me it may require him to do things I cannot know about, things that will confirm every dark story I have ever heard about Alexander Thornhill. And when it is over, if I want to walk away, he will set me up somewhere safe with enough money to start over, give me and Emma a clean break from his world. The offer hangs between us like a door he is holding open, an escape from the danger and the moral complexity and the constant fear that comes with loving a man like him. I set down my glass and cross the room until I am standing directly in front of him, close enough to see the tension in his jaw and the shadows under his eyes. And I tell him I am not leaving, that I chose this, chose him, that I walked into this with my eyes open, and I am not running now when things get hard. Something breaks in his expression, and he pulls me close, his arms wrapping around me with desperate strength, and he says my name like a prayer or a confession. I love you, he says against my hair. You and Emma have become my reason to build something better, to be more than what I was raised to be, and I am terrified that I will fail you the way I failed my sister. I pull back enough to see his face, and I tell him I love him too, that I am choosing this family we are building even though it is dangerous and complicated and nothing like what I imagined my life would become. He kisses me then, fierce and claiming, and I kiss him back with everything I have, this dangerous, beautiful man who saved me from humiliation on a hotel floor and somehow became the center of my entire world. We stand there in the firelight, holding each other, while somewhere in the city, Alexander's war begins, and I know that the coming days will test us in ways I cannot predict. But I also know that I am done being the victim, done letting fear make my choices. We will face this storm together, the three of us, a family forged in danger and bound by choice, and whatever comes next, we will meet it as one.